Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes Soaring Childcare Costs, Singapore Car Angst, Sunday Asia Briefing. Air Force, Ukraine downs 4 drones overnight. UN aid agency says Gaza operation is collapsing over funding cut wave. Scores attend funeral of unaccompanied veteran. US sees signs of progress on deal to release hostages, bring temporary pause to Israel-Hamas war. Soaring childcare costs, Singapore car angst, Sunday Asia Briefing. Bloomberg. Global inflation is starting to have an impact on various sectors of the economy, beyond just food prices. Investors are closely watching the U.S. Federal Reserve's policy meeting this week for any signs of a rate cut in March. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to deliver a relatively conservative budget on Thursday. Car prices in Singapore have risen so fast that the government has had to intervene, but concerns remain about the growing wealth gap. Rising inflation is pushing up childcare costs and driving women out of the workforce in countries such as Japan and Brazil. The U.S. is set to announce major chip-making grants to boost domestic production. Russia's war in Ukraine has led to a flood of Chinese engineers and suppliers to keep Moscow's heavy industry alive. China Evergrande Group will try to fend off liquidation at court hearings in Hong Kong. Japan's top banks may announce a drop in quarterly earnings, but profits from lending could increase if the central bank raises interest rates. Air Force, Ukraine downs 4 drones overnight. Yahoo! Russian forces launched a series of attacks on Ukraine, including a missile strike and a drone attack. Ukraine's Air Force managed to shoot down 4 out of 8 Shahid-type attack drones launched by Russia. The drones were launched from southern Russia, off the coast of the Azov Sea. Russian forces also used an Iskander-M ballistic missile to target Poltava Oblast. The missile was launched from the Voronezh region. The attacks caused a fire at an industrial site in Kremenchuk in Poltava Oblast. Russian forces mainly targeted Poltava, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Dnipropetrovsk oblasts in the latest attack. The Ukrainian Air Force was involved in repelling the air attack. UN aid agency says Gaza operation is collapsing over funding cut wave. Nikkei Asia. The main UN aid agency in Gaza, which provides aid to 2 million of the territory's 2.3 million people, has warned that its work is collapsing after 9 countries decided to cut funding over allegations that several agency employees participated in a deadly Hamas attack against Israel 4 months ago. The head of the Agency for Palestinian Refugees said he was shocked that such decisions were taken as famine looms in Gaza. The Israel-Hamas war has killed more than 26,000 Palestinians, destroyed vast swaths of Gaza and displaced nearly 85% of the territory's 2.3 million people. The Hamas attack in southern Israel killed about 1,200 people, mostly civilians, and about 250 hostages were taken. The war has also resulted in the deaths of 3 Palestinians in an airstrike in Rafah, which Israel says targeted a Hamas commander. The UN court has ordered Israel to urgently get aid to Gaza, where aid entering the territory remains well below the daily average of 500 trucks before the war. Scores attend funeral of unaccompanied veteran. Yahoo! Family members of Sergeant Darren Thurman were unable to attend his funeral at Fort Gibson National Cemetery, so the word was put out to the public to allow his brothers and sisters in arms to attend. About 30 members of the Porter Troop Support Club attended the service, with others from the local community also in attendance. This is the 8th or 9th unaccompanied veteran's funeral attended by Angela Folks of American Legion Post 27 in Sallisaw. U.S. sees signs of progress on deal to release hostages, bring temporary pause to Israel-Hamas war. Associated Press. U.S. negotiators are believed to be making progress on an agreement that would see Israel halt military operations against Hamas in Gaza for 2 months in exchange for the release of over 100 hostages who were captured during the attack on Israel on October 7, according to 2 senior administration officials. Bokai powers Fresno State to 84-70 victory over Air Force. Associated Press. Enoch Bokai scored 19 points and had 10 rebounds to lead Fresno State to an 84-70 victory over Air Force. Xavier Duzel contributed 15 points, while Jalen Weaver added 14 points. Bo Becker led Air Force with 22 points. Jeffrey Mills had 15 points, 6 assists, and 2 steals, and Rytis Petratus had 14 points, 5 assists, and 3 blocks. Fresno State trailed 43-40 at halftime. India pivots away from Russian arms, but will retain strong ties. Japan Times. India is looking to reduce its reliance on Russia for arms supplies due to Russia's inability to supply munitions and spares as a result of the war in Ukraine. India is slowly turning towards the West, particularly the United States, as it hopes to contain China and reduce its dependence on Russia. Russia has been India's largest arms supplier, accounting for 65% of its weapons purchases over the past 2 decades. However, the war in Ukraine has highlighted the need for India to diversify its weapons base. North Korea fired multiple cruise missiles off East Coast, South Korean military says. The Globe and Mail. North Korea fired multiple cruise missiles off its east coast on Sunday, its second such launch in less than a week, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff, JCS, said. The missiles were launched at around 8 a.m. and were being analyzed by South Korean and U.S. intelligence authorities, the JCS said, without specifying how many missiles were fired. North Korea is stepping up confrontation with the United States and its allies, but officials in Washington and Seoul say they have spotted no signs Pyongyang intends to take imminent military action. Netanyahu vows to eliminate Hamas as intense fighting rages in southern Gaza. ABC. Fighting in Khan Yunis, Gaza has forced Palestinians to flee further south, as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to eliminate Hamas. Netanyahu has faced domestic pressure over his handling of the conflict and has called for the elimination of Hamas to prevent further attacks. The New York Times has reported that US-led negotiators are close to an agreement where Israel would suspend its war in Gaza for around 2 months in exchange for the release of more than 100 hostages held by Hamas. Trump praises Texas governor as border state clashes with Biden administration over immigration. Associated Press. Former President Donald Trump has expressed his support for Texas Governor Greg Abbott's decision not to allow the Biden administration to remove razor wire from a popular corridor for migrants illegally entering the U.S. Trump gave a speech in Las Vegas, focusing on border security and saying that Texas should be fully supported in its measures to deter migrants. The former president also criticized the Biden administration for its handling of the border crisis and accused them of weaponizing law enforcement against him. Hello, viewers. I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the sixth dimension, bringing you the latest news and analysis from around the world. Let's dive right into today's stories. First off, rising inflation is causing concerns in various sectors of the economy. Investors are eagerly awaiting the U.S. Federal Reserve's policy meeting for any signs of a rate cut. In Singapore, car prices have skyrocketed, prompting government intervention. However, the growing wealth gap remains a pressing issue. Rising inflation is also impacting childcare costs, driving women out of the workforce in countries like Japan and Brazil. On the brighter side, the U.S. is set to announce major chip-making grants to boost domestic production, and Japan's top banks may see increased profits from lending if the central bank raises interest rates. Moving on to international affairs, Russian forces have launched attacks on Ukraine, including drone strikes and missile attacks. Ukraine's Air Force managed to shoot down 4 out of 8 drones, but the situation remains tense. Meanwhile, the main UN aid agency in Gaza is facing collapse after funding cuts from 9 countries. This comes as famine looms in Gaza, and the region continues to suffer from the aftermath of the Israel-Hamas war. Speaking of which, there are signs of progress in negotiations to bring a temporary pause to the conflict and secure the release of hostages. In other news, a heartwarming story emerged as members of the public attended the funeral of an unaccompanied veteran in the U.S. It's a touching reminder of the support and gratitude we should show to those who have served our country. On the sports front, Fresno State secured an 84-70 victory over Air Force, thanks to Enoch Bokai's impressive performance. Shifting our focus to international relations, India is looking to diversify its arms suppliers away from Russia due to the war in Ukraine. This move aims to reduce dependence on Russia and contain China. Meanwhile, North Korea fired multiple cruise missiles, heightening tensions in the region. However, there are no signs of imminent military action. Lastly, in the U.S., former President Donald Trump has voiced support for Texas Governor Greg Abbott's decision to maintain razor wire on the border. Trump criticized the Biden administration's handling of the border crisis and accused them of weaponizing law enforcement against him. That's all for today's news roundup. Remember, your thoughts and questions are always welcome. What are your thoughts on rising inflation and its impact on different sectors? And what do you think about the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza? Let's hear your views. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.